What's good, YouTubers and YouTubettes? This is JB Sports, back again with another one. Former unified welterweight champion and current top 5 welterweight contender, Keith One-Time Thurman. One time is playing the waiting game. Waiting on Errol Spence Jr. v. Spence-Crawford saga to play out. Will that fight get finalized? Well, according to Michael Carpenter, who was on his second go-round with the Spence versus Crawford, saying the fight is a done deal pretty much. They on the 2-yard line. Remember last time he said it was on the 1-yard line, so he pushed it back a yard this time. So it's on the 2-yard line. He said he don't see any obstacles that would prevent the fight from happening. He said that in one breath. Now in the other breath he says there's always things that can come up that can stop the fight from getting finalized. But he said the fight's going down in Las Vegas in all likelihood. That being Michael Carpenter. Michael Carpenter used to be, let me clarify that, used to be aligned with the PBC, but that's no more. He's no longer aligned with the PBC. He's aligned with ESPN and Top Rank Boxing. He writes for ESPN.com. So if you're talking about some top rank fighters and he comes out on his website and say a fight is getting lined up or a fight is finalized between 2 top rank fighters, you can take that to the bank. But when you're talking about 2 fighters that are not with top rank, not aligned with Bob Arum, then you can take what he's saying with a grain of salt. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. But he says looking likely to happen, man. We will see what happens. But again, Keith One-Time Thurman is playing a waiting game because he is the plan B option for the PBC to take on Errol Spence Jr. if they're unable to finalize Spence versus Crawford. Make no mistake about it. Now, will Errol Spence Jr. take the fight with Keith Thurman? He has steadfastly stated that he's not going to fight Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman didn't want no smoke with him when he was coming up. Keith Thurman didn't want no smoke when he became a world champion at 147, so he ain't trying to give Keith Thurman an opportunity to fight for his title. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But if it ain't making dollars, it ain't making sense, because the second biggest money fight in the welterweight division for Errol Spence Jr. is Keith One-Time Thurman. Obviously, the number 1 is Spence-Crawford. If he passes on Crawford, because Crawford can't agree to the guarantee with the PBC, and if he passes on Keith Thurman, his third option is Matias Stellonis. Stellonis is not going to give him the payday that he would get fighting Thurman or Crawford. So maybe he chooses principle over money. He said, I said what I said. I ain't giving this dude the opportunity to fight for my titles. He shunned me when I was coming up. He shunned me again when I became a world champion. I ain't paying Keith Thurman no mind. I ain't fighting him. If that's the case, then he's going to fight Stellonis. Stellonis is a world WBA welterweight champion, but that's a fight that's not going to nearly bring him the money that he will receive in a Crawford fight or a Thurman fight. So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. But there's a lot of different scenarios that could play out. It's a domino effect predicated on will Spence versus Crawford come to fruition. But if that fight is finalized, in all likelihood, we will get Keith Thurman versus Lara at a catch weight of 155 pounds. The fight will be for Lara's world WBA middleweight title. That's a secondary belt, but it is, at the end of the day, a belt. And if Thurman's able to defeat Lara, he can say that he's a multi-division world champion. And that's something that can add to his resume when he's attempting to get into the Hall of Fame. Right now, he's on the fence of a Hall of Fame fighter. He was on that trajectory to be a Hall of Fame fighter after he defeated Danny Garcia. He was coming off 2 impressive victories over Sean Porter and Danny Garcia. He was on a trajectory to become a Hall of Fame fighter. But due to inactivity, from injury, and not taking on the fights that boxing fans wanted him to take on, Errol Spence Jr., Spence-Crawford, he's on that fence as far as, is he going to be a Hall of Fame fighter or not? So we will see what happens and we will see what transpires. And if that's indeed the case, Crawford versus Spence gets finalized, Jerome Buzinez, who's a rising young welterweight contender, undefeated. A lot of people say he got next. that will set the stage for him to take on Matheus Stellionis. So Stellionis and Ennis and Thurman are in a holding panel, waiting on Crawford Spence to get done or not get done. Because once that fight gets done, that's going to lay the groundwork for those three fighters to line up their fights for the end of 2022. Let's say Spence-Crawford gets done. Hopefully it does get done. The guarantee is still a problem, but a lot of people are more positive about the fight happening in the last couple of days. So maybe Spence is going to take a little bit less of a guarantee, and they get at what they was going to pay Spence and give it to Crawford and satisfy him with the guarantee that he wants. And maybe that's the reason why this fight is pretty much a done deal, according to Michael Coppola. I don't know that. I just know that the last thing I heard was the PBC and TC can come together on a guarantee. And another thing that I understood was that Spence had agreed to terms, so he was satisfied with what he was going to get in the fight, because he understands the pay-per-view model that the PBC goes by. Lower guarantees with pay-per-view money on the back end for those fighters. And what the PBC do is they let their fighters get all of the pay-per-view. All of the pay-per-view. Your Dana Ugas versus Errol Spence Jr., both of those fighters got 100% of the pay-per-view. They split it 50-50. So all these people out here saying that Errol Spence Jr. trying to make Terrence Crawford take an 80-20 split, that's cap. That's not happening, bro. There's not no 80-20 split. Ugas got 50-50 with Spence. So you mean to tell me Ugas gonna get 50-50, but Errol Spence Jr. going to take 80-20? Come on, get the fuck out of here. I don't know where these people getting their information is, but it's cap, man. It's fugazi. The split is not the problem. It's a guarantee. And like I said, maybe Errol Spence Jr. went to Al Haymon and said, okay, I'm getting $5 million, he getting $4.5 million. Take $500,000 from me and give it to him. You know, let's make the fight happen. I don't think it happened like that, but I think, let me just say it like this. Maybe they offered Crawford $5 million. And they offered Spence $6 million. Spence probably said, okay, man, take $500,000 out of mine and give it to him. We'll go 50-50 all the way down the middle. It's already a 50-50 pay-per-view split, but he tripping because I'm getting a little bit higher guarantee, and he got a higher guarantee in the Porter fight. He got $6 million to fight Porter. He taking $5 million to fight me. He feeling some type of way. Okay, take $500,000 out of my $6 million. We both get $5.5 and 50-50 on the pay-per-view. Let's make the fight happen. Maybe that's what happened. If that's what's happening, maybe that's the reason why you got Michael Coppola out here saying that the fight is on the 2-yard line. Now they got to just basically lock down the venue. He said it's taking place in Las Vegas, but you got to lock down the venue. It's going to be at Mandalay Bay. It's going to be at MGM. It's going to be at T-Mobile. Well, on Las Vegas, you got to lock down the venue, and you got to lock down the date. They say November, but we're in November. You got to lock down that date, because according to Oscar De La Hoya, he's saying that's the date that Ryan Garcia going to come back in. And if that's the case, then we ain't going to get Ryan Garcia versus Tank Davis, because Tank Davis is coming back in December. I told you that in my last video, if I'm not mistaken. He's coming back in December. Oscar De La Hoya trying to throw that month out because they already got that month lined up for Ryan Garcia to take on JoJo Diaz. Oh yeah! So we will see what happens. We will see what transpires. But Ryan Garcia, I give him credit though. He trying to force Golden Boy hand, man. He said in the post-fight press conference that he destroyed Javier Fortuna in a very impressive performance. He said, man, I ain't going back down to 135. I'm fighting at 140. So he basically forcing their hand. He knows JoJo Diaz can't make no 140. JoJo Diaz is a blown-up featherweight. You know, he's a guy that's a natural 130-pounder fighting at 135. So he basically saying, man, look, I'm fighting at 140. So if I can't get the Tank Davis fight, I'll fight Teofimo Lopez, who's now campaigning at 140. So he basically trying to force the Golden Boy hand, because he know Golden Boy trying to shove that JoJo Diaz fight down his throat. He know that. He know that if he don't get the Tank Davis fight, that Golden Boy wants to make the JoJo Diaz fight. And he's saying, okay, I'm going up to 140. And JoJo Diaz little ass want to come up here to 140 and fight me and catch a beat down. Come on. But I really ain't trying to fight him nonetheless. I'm trying to fight Tank Davis. If I can't get that fight, I'm trying to fight Teofimo Lopez. And it's just a good cat and mouse game that Ryan Garcia is playing with Golden Boy Promotion. He really trying to force their hand into making them have a big fight in this next fight. He basically downplaying JoJo Diaz. Talking about, man, I don't want to fight no JoJo Diaz, man. I go in there and knock him out, man, and ain't nobody gonna give me no credit. That's basically what he said when he talked about the JoJo Diaz fight in the past. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. A lot of moving pieces on the chessboard, not only in the PBC, but with Golden Boy Promotions. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But Crawford, Spence gets done. We get Lara versus Thurman. We get Ennis versus Sionis. And we get some good fights. We get Ryan versus Teofimo Lopez, or Ryan versus Gervonta Tank Davis. But again, man, Oscar De La Hoya talking about Tank Davis like he's just another opponent. Talking about, yeah, we're going to fight in November. Let's make the fight happen. How you going to call the shots when you ain't the A side? You can't tell me what month I'm fighting in. And I think De La Hoya knows. De La Hoya is in he's in the boxing industry. He knows what's going on behind the scenes. He knows Tank Davis coming back in December. Last year, Tank Davis fought Eastside Cruz in December. Before fighting Mario, before they fought Mario Barrios, around about the same time he fought Rolando Romero. So he know what type of schedule that Gervonta Tank Davis is on. That's why he threw out the month of November. Talking about he coming back in the fall. And you heard Gervonta Tank Davis say right after Ryan Garcia's win over Javier Fortuna, they see y'all at the end of the year. Basically saying that I'm fighting in December. I don't know what they talking about, November, this and that. I'm the A side. Y'all fight when I want to fight. Y'all want to make the fight happen? Fight me in December on Showtime, pay-per-view. And another thing got thrown out last night that Ryan Garcia actually is not signed to the zone. He's signed with Golden Boy Promotions. And if that's the case, then that will go a long way in eliminating the obstacle of, well, the zone gonna want to show the fight and Showtime gonna want to show the fight, so they got to split the money up. And is the fight big enough to be split up? Or is it big enough to be a collaboration between the zone and Showtime? That'll pretty much put a kibosh on that. If he's not even signed to the zone, they can just make the fight on Showtime. Oscar De La Hoya can get his promoter's cut, and we can make the fight happen. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. But a lot of moving pieces, Keith One Time Thurman on the Brian Custer podcast said that he's tired of the belts being held up by Terrence Crawford and he's tired of the belts being held up by Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. Basically insinuating that they need to shit or get off the pot, make the fight happen, or allow some of these other welterweight contenders to fight for y'all belts. Basically what Keith Thurman said, but Keith Thurman got to understand that this is the biggest fight to be made in the sport of boxing. And if it takes a little bit longer to come to fruition, as long as it does come to fruition, then that's a good thing for the sport of boxing. Keith Thurman is, he's looking out for himself. He wants to, in his next fight for a belt. And that's why this Lara potential matchup is coming into play, because that will allow him to fight for a belt while Crawford and Spence fight takes place. So we will see what happens. And we will see what transpires. Ron Boots Ennis versus Monty Sionis would be a good fight. This is all a domino effect off of Crawford versus Spence happening. That will set the stage for these fights, for these welterweight contenders to take place. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Let me know your thoughts about Keith One Time Thurman taking on Adriano Lara at a catch weight of 155 pounds, fighting a naturally bigger guy with respectable power, and still, at this point of his career, good skills. He don't have the skills he had 4 or 5 years ago, but he's fighting a different style. He's a little bit more of he's a much more aggressive fighter. He's not fighting off the back foot. He's not doing as much movement as he did. I thought that cost him in the Canelo Alvarez fight in the championship round. Did too much moving and not enough sitting down in his punches and trying to land decisive and meaningful punches on Canelo. He did way too much moving. Cost himself that fight in my opinion. A lot of people say, well, Lara beat Canelo. I don't think he beat Canelo. I thought he lost the fight, man. Very close fight, but I thought he lost it. It could have been a draw. But he definitely did not beat Canelo, in my opinion, man. He gave away too many rounds at the end of that fight, doing all that moving and not enough sticking and moving. I don't mind moving, but stick and move. He was just doing a lot of moving. Wasn't letting his hands go enough to win a lot of those rounds at the end. So we will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Let me know your thoughts about Keith Thurman versus Adriano Lara. Let me know your thoughts about the state of negotiations between Errol Spence Jr. versus Terrence Crawford. take what you heard from Michael Carpenter with a grain of salt, because again, he is not aligned with the PBC. A few years ago, he was basically a PBC source. He was basically a guy that when you heard him leaking fights involving PBC fighters, you could take it to the bank. But nowadays you can't, because he's with Top Rank Boxing ESPN. So if you see him coming out saying that a fight involving top rank fighters is finalized, well, you can take that to the bank. But when you talk about two fighters that are not with top rank, and he's saying that fight is on the 2-yard line, he said earlier that it was on the 1-yard line, and that turned out to not be true, take what he says with a grain of salt, ladies and gentlemen. But hopefully it is done. But I think if it is close to coming to fruition, that means that Errol Spence Jr. told Al Heyman to take a little bit off the top of my guarantee and give it to Terrence Crawford, and let's make the fight happen. Prime example, I'm getting $6 million, he getting $5 million. That's the original offer. Take $500,000 and give it to him. We both get $5.5 million, 50-50 pay-per-view split. Let's make the fight happen. If that's the case, then the fight will get finalized. But maybe Crawford say, nah, I'm not moving off my number. I don't care what you get in your guarantee. My number is my number. I got 6.5 versus Porter. I'm not taking $1 less to fight you, which is a bigger fight. If that's the case, then we still at a standstill. We still at a crossroad. I love the everybody meet me at the crossroads. We still at a crossroad, and it get to a point that the PBC needs to announce their schedule for the rest of the year, and that might cause both fighters to go their separate ways. Hopefully that don't happen. Hopefully the fight does get finalized. We will see what happens, and we will see what transpires. Follow me on Facebook, Gerard.Briscoe.3551. Follow me on Instagram, 9707 Gerard. Like, share, and subscribe to JB Sports. The man, the myth, the legend. Holla.